Hello and welcome to the Ballymaloe Festival of Food podcast. I'm Brie Allen.
And I'm Jolene Cronin. And in this series, we're sitting down with some of the voices at the heart of this year's festival.
Today's conversation feels like a special one. We're joined by Rory O'Connell, co-founder of the Ballymaloe Cookery School, teacher, writer, and someone who has shaped the way many of us think about food in Ireland.
And of course, Rory is such an integral part of the Ballymaloe story and central to the festival. But what struck us in this conversation is that it goes far beyond food and that local ecosystem here in Ballymaloe. This conversation for him is about how we see the world, the importance of detail, of beauty, of place, and the values that shape how we live and work.
We talk about his early life, the influence of family, travel, teaching, and what continues to inspire him today.
This is a gentle, thoughtful conversation and one we really think captures the spirit of Ballymaloe.
We hope you enjoy it.
So here we are in Ballymaloe House in the grounds, and the birds are singing. It's springtime. We've just walked through the garden, saw even a bit of sea kale. Getting your thoughts on fruit for the summer. There's so much going on, Rory, and it's really, really nice to have you join us on the podcast today. Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm good. Life's very good. Thank you. Very busy as usual, but that's lots of cooking, lots of teaching, and the usual food and gardening obsessions.
Yeah. What's bringing you joy these days now?
What's bringing me joy? In terms of food or generally? I mean, that's quite a broad question, actually. might need to narrow that down.
I threw it in there casually, but I'm not know what's bringing you joy in life.
Well, actually, just walking past the sea kale pots there, that's been bringing me joy over the last few weeks because it's one of those very unusual vegetables that unless you grow it yourself, you won't have it because nobody's growing it commercially. And it's for anybody who doesn't know what it looks like celery really, and you grow it under cover, so it could be a lovely terracotta cloche or some less glamorous upturned black bin to keep the light off it, and then it obviously that increases the amount of heat that's growing around it as well because it's protected. So any little bit of sunshine at all landing on the terracotta or on the black plastic bin gives it its own little microclimate. And you get these long, thin, rather elegant, pale white, nearly ivory coloured stalks of very tender vegetable, which is absolutely wonderful. One of the really highlights of the year. You can compare it in a way with asparagus, which for us is a highlight. Very short season. We eat it when we have it, when we grow it, and after that we forget about it. So for 10 and a half months of the year we don't eat asparagus, and then for a month and a half we eat as much of it as we can get. But sea kale falls into that category, but in a way is much less known than asparagus because it's never in the shops.
Yeah.
So and then we cook it quite simply. Poached hollandaise sauce toast is the classic way of doing it. But of course it's wonderful with fish or particularly with white poultry, all those sort of things. But that's one of those joyous sort of moments of the year, that just conflux of time. You can't grow it out of season, which is bliss, So it's just an absolute exclamation mark, punctuation mark, whatever you want to call it in the year.
It's a real start of spring.
Amazing. I don't
Totally
think I've
start of
ever
spring,
actually tasted
No, it's
it.
very
It's
unusual.
so delicious.
Yeah.
Most people haven't tasted it. It's one of the truly great things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it also grows down by our seashore in.
Yeah, it does grow as wild because basically everything that we have managed to bring from the wild, everything starts in the wild.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
And so it has now somebody who, I don't know who discovered that if you brought it into your garden and covered it, you got something different. Some brilliant gardener probably.
Yeah.
Maybe with the inspiration from a cook. So, but what grows on the seashore, so it grows on that part, the foreshore, is wilder, obviously, and is green and tough. And I've never actually eaten it from the foreshore, but why would I when we have the kind of the Rolls Royce of the sea kale?
The Rolls Royce, that's for sure. That's such an interesting. I suppose knowledge of food, to know about that and kind of bringing it into the garden. Where do you think that interest came from, and what was food like for you growing up?
It came from growing up at home and from my mother. We had a very, very good garden at home with all sorts of things, that you'd expect, like cabbages and Brussels sprouts and all those sort of things. And fruit bushes, lots of fruit bushes, raspberries and gooseberries. I particularly remember the torturous business of picking gooseberries, and we all did that.
We've all done.
So that was central to the way we ate. And then we had hens at one stage, we had a cow, And that was the time when, you had a little local shop which, was much more pared back than our expectation of shops
Yeah.
nowadays. I
Yeah.
think perhaps sometime in the future, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just an old fogey, that we will look at this moment in time, the last few decades, maybe the next few decades, where you walk into a shop as a supermarket, marvelous as they are, with this extraordinary, almost impossible possibility of variety,
Yeah.
which is wonderful. It's like Aladdin's cave, really, if you think about it. But we know that some of it, at least, doesn't really make sense.
A lot of it doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
perhaps I was being a little bit
There's a
kind there.
huge
Yeah.
cost
I
to
think
it.
you were being a bit kind
Yeah,
there.
there's a
But it's
cost to
become
it.
so normal when we see everything
Yeah,
in season on our shelves.
Which goes back to the
And
point
in
about the
reality,
sea
it's
kale
not.
then, because you'll never see it in a supermarket, and and it's not being grown commercially because it doesn't really make sense to grow it commercially.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much you'd need to charge a kilo. You'd need to charge €50 a kilo or something, which would, outrageous, just not
Yeah.
possible for people. So anyway, going back to your question, so growing up at home, we had wonderful food. My mother was a wonderful cook. She liked to cook. She was incredibly busy, and she took our food very seriously in that she had sort of an innate knowledge that food is health, etc., etc. And her parents, her mother had also been a great cook, and they ate really, really well. So there's that history there, and we grew up at home looking forward to the next meal, every next meal, and I'm sure it was so irritating for my mother.
That's a bit unusual for a kid to say they were looking forward to their next
No, we
meal.
didn't really look forward to. Well, I certainly did look forward to every next meal, and once we'd finished one meal before we left the table, because we all had to sit down and all the rest of it,
Yeah.
and we ate everything. But we would ask my mother, "What's for the next meal?" Which must have driven her completely crazy. I mean, can you imagine little brats?
And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have 8 siblings.
8
So
siblings.
there was a lot of
9
cooking
of you.
going on, really,
Yeah.
But and then we were actively encouraged to help in the kitchen because
Yeah.
there was a lot of work to do, and we had some help. But so we all know how to peel spuds, and I mean, we could have fended for ourselves in the kitchen. I'd say by the time we were 9 or 10, we'd
Such
be
an
able to
important life
put a
skill
roast
to give
chicken
your
into
kids.
the oven, or
Did
Yeah.
you think at that point that you'd see your life in food?
No, absolutely not at all. No, not at all.
Where did you see your life going?
I tried to know my head from my tail at that stage. I I think
After you finished school.
I mean, I'm sort of look at younger people nowadays with great awe in their ambition and sometimes in their capacity to plan and to know how things might be, or what they would really like to do. I didn't have any of those thoughts really at all.
Really?
No, but when it got to the stage where where I needed to be making those decisions, having gone to a local very good school in the village and then gone to boarding school, and then the expectation would have been, as most of my siblings did, to go to university or third level. I hadn't a clue what I wanted to do, so I decided I would like to study law because I thought it sounded respectable, and it might give me the possibility to be able to hunt twice a week.
To go hunting?
To go hunting
Okay.
twice a week.
Right.
Because if you're a lawyer or a solicitor, a country solicitor, you're kind of in charge of your own destiny in a way. You weren't working for anybody else.
Sounds very well planned.
So, but then,
it's a good
it would have been well planned if I'd gone to lectures. And it would have been very planned if I actually knew what it meant to be a lawyer or a solicitor, because I hadn't a clue.
Rory, somehow I can't
So
see you
I
as a
didn't go to
solicitor or a
lectures.
lawyer at
I
all.
went to the races. I failed my exams. I failed my repeats. And my darling, darling mother, when she should have said, "You're a hopeless, useless layabout," said, "Darling, I don't think university is for you." So that was that. So anyway, I kind of messed around for a couple of years. Then I had terribly grand notions. I thought I would quite like to be a fine art auctioneer. And I could see myself on the rostrum at Christie's or Sotheby's in London knocking down paintings for millions.
I can definitely
And
see
then-
that now.
And then I went to study that for a while to discover there was a lot of the law involved in actually the process of becoming an auctioneer. You need to know your law. And then, oh Christ, I can't be dealing with that. So I flunked out of that as well. I mean, honestly, really, the waste of money. actually in a time when we were kind of fairly cautious about money.
Except you say that, but actually you learned something from each one of those things. So
Yeah.
although you didn't end up on that path, you actually discovered what you didn't want to do. And for each one of those things, you have amazing art in your house. Sorry, I'm going completely off piece now. So,
No, you're
so
not.
did maybe the art auctioneer give you a joy in art?
Yes, it did. I think that, no, actually, if I'm going to say it would have taken the joy out of art. However, in terms of art, and we are lucky enough to have some nice things, but that came from my mother as well, actually.
Okay.
Frankly, because she was always telling us to look at things, or we'd be driving on the car and say, "Look at that tree, look at that house, look at that old gate," and then nothing she liked better than an antique shop. So from a young age, we would be, certainly the younger ones would go with her. She'd stop in Rossgrey or wherever it was, Kilkenny, and we'd go into an antique shop with her. So I certainly was looking at things, not consciously perhaps, but subconsciously, and noticing things
Yeah.
from a fairly early age. And I was just enjoyed,
Yeah.
just knew, and just enjoyed,
Yeah.
So, and I suppose, Brie, to answer your question, that sort of led into whatever the sensibility or sensitivity is that one might have towards visual arts,
Yeah.
whatever they be, a painting or a piece of silver or ceramics or just beautiful stone.
Beautiful things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, going back to the question. So you were in art auctioneering. You decided that wasn't for you.
Yes.
So what was the next step then?
So then I went home for a while, helped out at home a little bit. So, because we grew up in the Midlands, we were sort of general merchants, I would say. That was our family business. We were there at the centre of the community and to serve the community in many ways. So we were auctioneers, undertakers, wool merchants, grain merchants, pub.
Wow.
At one point there was a post office. There was a shop.
So the O'Connells as a family as a whole.
As a family business, exactly, yeah. So all those sort of things going on. So it was really very community based, and our well-being, financially and otherwise, depended on the success of the local community who were farmers.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was agriculturally based. So those roots in the soil and understanding at an early age what the vagaries of the weather meant to farmers. The difficulty, because I'm ancient, and I grew up at a time
Not ancient.
I grew up way before the EU and all that sort of thing. So I remember farmyards for small farmers, being feet of muck in winter.
Yeah.
This was long before concrete.
Yeah.
And devices for cleaning down your farmyard. So it was really hard labour. And we never spoke about these things really, of course, because this was just the way it was. But that there was that sort of loyalty to the land and loyalty to the people who worked the land.
And appreciation.
Yeah, appreciation was sort of in there somewhere. And not having been outwardly discussed, but it mattered to us, and we did care. Of course, if a farmer arrives in with a truck of barley, malting barley, okay? So, as distinct from feeding barley. So, malting barley, much more valuable because that goes from malt. And then I remember my eldest brother, William, who's in charge of that side of our business when my father died, and you'd have to do a moisture test on the barley. And this was a really tense moment for a farmer.
Okay.
And if
Still is.
Yes, still is, yeah. So whether or not the barley was going to be good enough for malting or not, because the price variable was huge.
Yeah.
So that's all in there somewhere. And with that comes, perhaps a certain feeling of responsibility.
Do you feel like almost like a custodian for those?
Well, that
and
sometimes your decisions and things like that, back in the case of the barley, really it would affect the life of people, and of those sort of people who were part of our community. I mean, we all went to the same church on a Sunday.
Okay, yeah.
We all kneeled on the same pews.
Yeah,
We all
yeah.
spoke to the same whatever it is, deity
Higher
of some
source.
description.
Yeah,
Higher
yeah,
source, yeah.
Yeah.
So there was that complete sort of agricultural sort of existence. I mean, we weren't farmers, we had land.
Yeah.
And we were obsessed with horses and ponies, certainly all of us, particularly the younger ones, Sister Elizabeth and I, and that was all part of it as well. But we swam in the local river,
Yeah.
absolute bliss, and we were free range. We ranged freely and fearlessly,
Yeah.
really, around in our area, which was very beautiful.
It's beautiful,
It's
isn't
very
it?
beautiful, really. Yeah. My father died when I was very young, and my mother missed him dreadfully, and she never spoke about him. Really, I think it was too difficult for her. But our home was very calm. Was very happy.
Yeah.
It really was. Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels like so much of that time has lived with you. Like, and I actually love the way that you describe the world. I think the detail which you go into it is just so beautiful and rich, and it seems really important.
Well, it
the
is
way
really
you describe
important.
it.
I mean, when it comes to sort of, maybe I'll go back to how I fell into cooking then, Bree. So I was messing around, having not ended up on the rostrum in Sotheby's. And then eventually, I think I helped out at home doing various things. And then maybe it was, Mummy suggested that because at that point, Trina was living down here. I think she was married to Tim by then, at Ballymaloe. And Mummy suggested, because we used to come to Ballymaloe and we had some family holidays in Ballymaloe. So I'd eaten in the dining room, all of that sort of thing. And we would come and stay with Trina and Canoit and Tim. Mummy suggested that I come down to Ballymaloe because Mrs. Allen was looking for someone to help to work on reception.
Okay.
So I came down for the summer. The idea was that at the end of summer I would have decided.
And how
yet
old
again,
were you then?
I was only 18 then, because
18.
I got into university when I was 16.
Oh, I see.
So there was
well,
some sort of
no wonder the
clerical-
law was
Yeah.
tricky for you.
There was
Yeah,
some sort of
that's-
clerical error.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't know how it happened, but anyway, I got in. So I would know my own name, never mind what I might do in life, or turning up for lectures on time or the likes.
Mind you, you're the youngest, aren't you?
Elizabeth's younger.
Oh, Elizabeth's younger, I
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I was to come down to Ballymaloe, work on reception, have a good time, and come back to Cullihill deciding what it was I was going to do with my life. The expectation would have been that we would do something academic or business orientated. But by the end of the summer, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I sort of enjoyed working on reception. It's worth bearing in mind, anybody who's listening, that this was a time when there was one phone at the reception desk at the front desk. I think there were two other phones in the building.
Okay.
One in Mrs. Allen's sitting room. I think there was a phone in the kitchen. So you did a lot of running.
Yeah.
You did
Yes.
a lot of finding people. You did
Yeah.
a lot of leaving notes.
Even when I started on reception, there was
Yes.
a lot of running, a lot of
Yes,
finding
yeah,
people.
yeah. So though I loved it, I decided this is definitely not for me.
Yeah, okay.
But I hadn't made up my mind what I wanted to do, but I loved the food. And fortunately and wonderfully, as staff, we got to eat the same food as the guests.
Oh, wow.
So at the end of the evening, you'd come down, and I'd ask Jim Cullen, who was in the kitchen, you'd look at the menu. Obviously, if it was you wouldn't say, can I have the lobster, but essentially, a wonderful piece of fish or the chicken or the turkey, whatever was on. So I knew what the food tasted like, but having grown up with wonderful food at home, and as I said, looking forward to every next bite. I loved food. Again, not conscious about it, but it just that was the way it was. But my mother didn't make, for example, béarnaise sauce.
Okay.
She was a wonderful cook.
Yeah.
She didn't make hollandaise sauce, but she made so many things so wonderfully. So I wanted to learn how to make a few things. So I asked Mrs. Allen if I could go into the kitchen, almost unpaid, until Christmas.
Okay.
And she said yes. So that was maybe October or something, because the season used to quieten down somewhat then. But then, and that's how I found myself in the kitchen. But within within about a short period of time, I felt very comfortable.
Yeah.
And knew without, again, a lot of these things become more obvious to you later. But somehow or other I knew that I could do it, And that was really wonderful, having been an average academic, and partly failed academic, but to get to a stage where you are to arrive at a position where you find that you're good at something.
Yes.
Especially
And
at
you're only
18.
average. Now,
Yeah.
I grew up in a situation where there was no pressure. My mother didn't pressure us in any way. Perhaps she should have done. I don't know. But we weren't ever told, you need to be an A student. That wasn't our objective.
Yeah.
Really.
I-
But to find it where actually you could make something and it was really good was an amazing sort of realization and importance to me. And then the other thing, but I don't want to talk about this much later, was that interesting in cooking as well, that if you make something that isn't so good, you have an opportunity. Sometimes later on in that day, or at the very least the next day, to do it again.
Yeah.
There are very few professions who give you that possibility.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
interesting.
And also a failure in the kitchen, because you learn from it, really. You have an immediate learning, whereas again in some careers, I mean, if you fail in other careers, it might be 3 or 4 months before you get the opportunity to revisit that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's all this sort of immediacy of it, and because the love of food, the knowledge of food, all of that growing up, kind of just made sense very
And
quickly.
it seems to me that all that business foundation as well has come through in everything else that you do too, with like the cookery school and
Yes.
everything else. It makes a lot of sense to see how it all came together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then at some point or other, I said, well, this is maybe what I'm going to do. And Mrs. Allen recognised pretty quickly that I was well able to cook. And at very lucky catch, because the first week that I was in the kitchen, it happened to be a period when Mrs. Allen was here, and which she mostly was, but she used to travel a fair bit as well, but when she was testing recipes.
Yeah.
And that would be, so again, you remember it's a time where cookery books were few and far between. It was a real special event when a new cookery book arrived in the post, or you got it from a shop or whatever. So at that point, and a lot of the cookery, I mean, at that time as well, the pinnacle of international food was regarded as being French cooking.
Okay.
Yeah, which
right.
it was.
Yes.
Really,
Yeah.
it really was.
We're talking the 70s here,
Yeah,
aren't we?
late 70s.
Late
Yeah,
70s.
exactly, yeah, late 70s. So anyway, Miss Allen was testing recipes with a view to putting them on the menu,
Yeah.
Because when you test a recipe in a cookery book, there's always going to be nuance that suits the ingredients from your particular place as regards from the particular place where the chef developed the recipe.
Okay.
So there's little, there's that sort of changes that you have to look at. So I was really working with her hand in glove for that week, and that was, when I look back on it, amazing. And then she could see that, this wasn't Greek to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
this
you
was
would do
English.
it.
You had an innate
yeah.
talent.
Yeah, this was English to me.
There's a couple of things that come up as you talk about those recipes. One is, I guess you get a recipe book from some other part of the world, and you're tasting that culture and those different flavors,
Yes.
and you're adapting it to it. And also I can see, like, now you as a teacher and writing recipes as well, like what that experience is like to translate those recipes and write new recipes for
Yes,
people. So
yes.
there's kind of like two things I can see that are happening there. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, one of the unusual things about Ballymaloe's kitchen, which was seminal in my training, because that's where I learned my formal training started, there were recipes for everything, and
Yeah.
which is unusual in restaurant kitchens.
Okay.
And Mrs. Allen was fastidious about her recipes for several reasons. One is she wrote for the Irish Times every week, so recipes needed to work. And she also had written the Ballymaloe Cookery book, so the research for that was hilarious. But anyway,
Really?
little bits of paper everywhere, and what you can
Yeah.
imagine. Anyway, but a wonderful, wonderful, important book. But so, and I think naturally myself, I aspire to being organised, certainly in the kitchen.
Okay.
Yeah. With the knowledge that, it's a particular set of ingredients of impeccable quality, treated in a particular way, the correct quantities, the correct cooking temperatures, the correct processes, will give anybody a result, or give everybody a result,
Yeah.
if you believe in the science of it, really. So that, along with my love of food, and I'll talk about the mystery of it all in a minute, but would feed into how I write my recipes in hopefully a way, and also then would by default ending up teaching, finding a way to give the message to students both orally and also in the written form, which gives them the maximum possibility of getting a
success.
result.
Yeah.
That's really important. Yeah.
That breeds confidence in other people
I-
as well.
I-
It's a gift to be able to give that to people.
That's absolute gift. Yeah.
I feel the way you write recipes, it kind of almost injects a little bit of confidence in you that, like, this is going to be foolproof.
I hope so, yes,
One of
yeah.
well, hopefully, fingers crossed. One of the other things I like actually about the way you present the TV shows is that when you present recipes, it's not just one recipe, it feels like a whole meal.
Yeah.
It's all the extra things
Yeah.
that come with it. It's
And
an
it's accessible.
experience.
We can all
Excuse me.
cook
Well,
it.
that's interesting as well, because one of the
Yeah.
challenges back in the day for Mrs. Allen and and I later on when I became head chef at Ballymaloe was creating a menu which was balanced, where guests could pick from each course and end up with what we used to call a balanced meal.
Okay.
So we loved all the fats, let's face it. The butter, the cream, the duck, the goose, everything, wonderful, fats. And everything from our area, from the soil under our feet. But but there was a great focus on, and it's a real skill, a real skill actually. It takes a long, plenty of time and concentration to master, to write a menu where techniques aren't repeated, where ingredients aren't repeated, where it's not too rich, where there's a possibility of lightness to go with the delightful richness.
Yeah.
And that's also trickier when you're working with that, to use the cliche term, farm to fork.
Yes.
Where actually you end up with a glut of tomatoes, or you end up with a glut of asparagus,
yes.
and it's so easy to put them into every dish.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and it's and that's fine, and it's good. You want to use them and not waste a single thing. But it's we were always aiming to produce something that was sophisticated. Certainly here at Ballymaloe, and even some of the dishes were deceptively simple. The idea was always to have it sophisticated. So, and the beginning of that would be a balanced menu.
Yeah.
Which changed every day.
Yeah, which changed every single day. Yes, that was sort of a continuous challenge, really.
Yeah.
And I see that in the story of what's been going on in Ballymaloe for years, and also what you're doing now, and all that inspiration that you're giving to people in the cookery school and on the TV as well. Yeah. Talking about the TV, actually, when we had this little brainstorm conversation last week, I was like, "Did you present a Christmas TV show with Dorina a few years ago?" And you nearly yelped down the phone to me, and you were like, "That was a Punch and Judy experience."
Yes, yeah.
And I just had such a giggle because, family dynamics are always so
Indeed.
interesting.
Very, very interesting. Yes, yeah.
And we're all real.
Yeah. We did a couple of Christmas TV shows for years, which was great fun, and people loved it. I think perhaps for the fact of maybe they loved it because there was a possibility always of it kicking off.
Yeah.
Well, the two of you were so natural with each other on the TV program that it's just
But it was great
mannerisms.
fun, and I think everybody loved it. But most of my TV shows have been solo,
Oh yeah.
which gives me.
And I heard that you're a one-take Rory as well. That's what I was told. Is that true?
To touch wood, I'm always feared. I mean, all my shows are completely unscripted because, in theory, I should have the knowledge in here already, So, and sometimes writing it down can just garble or it puts the pressure on you, which sometimes stymies the natural flow of logical knowledge that should come from your brain to your mouth.
Yeah.
So, I tend, I'm definitely unscripted for sure.
That's cool.
But I love doing TV shows.
I'd say they're fun.
Yeah. Tell us about Morocco.
Oh,
How did
Morocco,
you
right.
end up? Where did the concept come from to do the Moroccan show?
TV series,
And then how did you choose where you're going to go, what you did, who you cooked with, and all the rest?
Well, I love Morocco. I first went to Morocco. Actually, this is a story. When I was working in Ballymaloe, I took a winter off one year to go, because I wanted to go and travel.
Okay.
So I went to America and worked with Simon Pearce, whose brother Stephen Pearce, the wonderful Pearce family, potters, glassmakers, from just down the road. Simon asked me would I come out to his restaurant in Vermont and spend a few weeks in the kitchen just to help them a little bit. And I did that, which was great fun.
It's a beautiful part of the
A
world.
wonderful part of the world.
Yeah.
And went skiing, did all the things you do up there. And there's such incredible aesthetic. And then while I was out there, I was obviously going to come back to Ballymaloe for the season, all that sort of thing. But Miss Allen had booked to go on an Irish Georgian Society tour of Morocco.
Oh, right.
And used to do these incredible tours.
Yeah.
And she messaged me, I suppose she probably wrote to me,
Yeah.
because I think it would have been too expensive to ring me, and said, look, I can't do this. It happens the day after you come back from Morocco, from America. Do you want to go? And I said, yes.
Wow. Yeah.
So anyway, off I went with these incredibly grand Irish Georgians at this tour of Marrakesh, which was led by Desmond and Penny Guinness, the amazing Desmond Guinness,
Yeah.
great preservation hero of Irish Georgian architecture. And anyway, had this sort of extraordinarily exotic week. And because we were traveling with Dennis Guinness, or Desmond Guinness, no doors were closed.
Yeah,
Every door was open. So we got into these incredible palaces, which were louche and naughty and dazzling and like an Aladdin's cave, you know. And that was my first taste of Morocco. We had incredible food, saw amazing places. One of the funny stories is when we arrived at our hotel, it was a no alcohol hotel, so there was consternation coming from the
That's not going to do now.
heavily clinking duty-free bags of the Irish Georgian Society patrons. And a very tense deal was struck with the manager, which allowed people to drink in their room.
Oh, right.
So, but people hastily disappeared to their rooms, and you could hear ice buckets running up and down along the corridor outside. Anyway, but that started a long life love affair with Morocco.
Yes, yeah.
Much later then I discovered Tangier through visiting a friend who lived there, Gordon Watson. And that cemented my love of Morocco.
Okay.
So then, to go back to your question, Brie, then a few years ago I did a travel program called A Long Weekend In, where we went to mainly European destinations, and that was great fun and great success, I think. And then it came up the possibility I'd always wanted to do a program as a result of those, a series dedicated to Morocco.
Yeah.
So, and it took a long time to get that off the ground, but we did eventually with my
And it's
with
a
the help of
beautiful country.
my director and producer David Hare, and also Brian Walsh, late of RTE. Late as in he doesn't work there anymore, not in that he's dead. He's very much alive. But anyway, and Kerry Gould sponsored that program, because without that we wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
And I'm also very thankful to them. So then I thought, well, how should I do this? Well, I thought one of the most wonderful ways to arrive in Morocco is to take the ferry from Tarifa, the south of Spain, across the Straits of Gibraltar. You leave recognizable Europe, sounds, smells, tastes, all the rest of it, and then suddenly, you know, half an hour on the fast ferry across the very, very busy Straits of Gibraltar, and you're in a completely different culture,
Yes, yeah.
where you don't understand the language. I wish I did speak Arabic, but I don't. And it just goes deep into my soul. So we started off in Tangier, and then it was also an opportunity. One of the wonderful things about making those sort of TV shows, it sometimes gives you the opportunity to go to places where you haven't been to before. And the other delightful thing about making a travel show, dear listeners, is you don't have to queue anywhere you go.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
So it means you can get to see so much so quickly. So I'd always want to go to Chefchaouen, which is known as the Blue City.
Oh, yeah.
Then it makes sense to go down to Fez, which I'd been to before, which is this extraordinary medieval city, biggest covered market in the world. I mean, literally, you could be lost in there for days. Some of the streets are only just a few feet wide. And sometimes to this day you'll meet a gentleman or lady coming along with a donkey. On both sides will be panniers of whatever they happen to be, fruit and vegetables or Moroccan crafts, which are incredible. And then off we kept going then down to Marrakesh and Essaouira and somewhere else. That was that, yeah. It was a wonderful opportunity. We went like the blazes. You know, we really went like the blazes because in many ways, as you know, you do you get your shots and meet the wonderful people and do your recording, and then off you go. Because this is, you know, it's not Netflix.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's a tight budget. And
But I wanted to give the feeling and the colour of the program. I wanted to try and translate how I feel about Morocco, and how I've always made to feel so welcome. And you know, we talk about the Irish welcome, which is a wonderful thing. The Moroccan welcome is really quite a thing as well. No matter you go to the most simple households, you know, in the countryside. I mean, you know, really, really very simple. You'll always be offered a cup of mint tea. You'll be always somehow or other a little sweet pastry of some description. Will appear. There will always be that innate hospitality, and then the other end of the scale, of course, are these incredible lavish banquets and all the rest of it. And I loved, from going to Morocco for I suppose over 30 years now, watching the country evolve, watch it becoming a very modern society, which which is wonderful to see as well. But the tradition that still exists. And the things that, apart from the food, which of course I love and strikes me deeply, but the craft, which still exists in some ways in almost medieval type circumstances. And there's always a question mark when you're a traveller. like that because it's beautiful looking to you. It ain't quite so glamorous if you're the person at the other side of this particular meeting who's hammering the tin or weaving the things, you know. But who knows? Not my place to.
And then when you bring some of that art home, you relive that
Yes.
experience when you cook those dishes, when you get those spices back into your cooking.
Yeah.
It's all just
Yeah.
kind of relives so many great memories.
Do you travel
Yes.
with an empty suitcase so you can bring all these beautiful
I'm
things back?
very proud to say that nowadays, and I'd say for the last 10 years, I've travelled with carry-on only.
Wow.
I can't. I end up buying things or I can't resist them, and I need to bring things home.
there does come a point in your life, it's certainly in my life, in terms of my house, our house, where you know, where there's not a lot of real estate left on which to hang a wall. Or, I mean, how many baskets does one man need? You know,
Well, there is
but
that
it's
too.
so tempting. So if I'm desperate for something, I'll buy something small, or else I'll try and ship it
Or you
back,
try and ship it
and then pay 4 times the cost, the original cost, to get it through customs to get it in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
But,
other countries have really made a mark on you?
well, I love the European countries that have always been easy. I love London. It's just endlessly exciting and wonderful, and for all sorts of different reasons. And of course, France and Italy. But then moving further east, I remember the first time I went to Vienna, I was amazed by how wonderful it was and the grandeur. And, you know, Vienna sits at that point sort of where the west almost ends and the east pretty much sort of starts. And you know, the history and the architecture and just the sheer sort of grandeur of it. Very good food as well, and all that sort of thing. An interesting sort of a mixture of sort of Eastern kind of goulashy food, and then Wiener Schnitzel and all those different things, the wonderful cakes and viennoiserie and all that sort of thing. So almost a sort of a little melting pot.
Yeah.
But sort of further afield, absolutely love Southeast Asia. I'd love to go back to Thailand.
Oh,
Okay.
I would.
Yeah, absolutely love to go back to Thailand. And I need that area. Cambodia,
Gorgeous.
maybe one of my favourite, most places ever. The most charming people. I mean, ravishing, crumbling jungle, you know, embalmed temple complexes. Just delightful food, and again, sort of food everywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
And the
it's-
generosity of the
yes.
people, and the history has been so traumatic.
Oh my.
To see them emerging from
Yeah.
this horrendous,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
history again. But they lost the grandparents' generation in Cambodia.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, all those skills that you unknowingly learn from your mother and your
Yes, yeah,
grandfather
yeah.
and sort of your aunts and uncles, they've lost that
Yes,
because
yeah,
they were
yeah.
all wiped out.
Maybe
so
trying
it's
to
a very
relearn some of them. Yeah.
yeah, and
That's
they're trying to
very delicate, isn't
relearn,
it?
and it's a
Like,
really delicate,
yeah.
and they're, oh yeah, it's a really extraordinary country
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
only
yeah.
sort of really
And Laos
coming
as
out of
well.
itself.
Yeah.
Laos, that was just absolutely extraordinary. Yeah.
So many
And
great
Mexico.
places.
I'd love to go back to Mexico.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
the world trip.
Yeah.
You know, one of the
But
great.
there's no place like home, Rory.
I don't know. There's no place like home. Yeah, and, you know, good Mexican food is, you know, it's one of the great cuisines of the world, really, and the art scene in Mexico is unbelievably vibrant. It's one of the kind of the world centers for contemporary art at the moment, but also the craft in Mexico is incredible,
Yeah.
absolutely
It's so
incredible,
detailed,
and
yeah.
everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. I brought home a sink from Mexico.
Oh, good Lord.
And that was like definitely not hand luggage status.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, well done. Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh,
so
the
I can imagine your
furniture.
house is
Yeah.
like Aladdin's cave, as you say.
yeah.
I love the sketches in your book, The Joy of Food.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Do you draw and paint, and do you have your own creative artistic practice?
I don't really know. I mean, I did do a little bit of painting sort of years ago.
Yeah.
I never reckoned I had any talent at it at all. The drawings in this book started off, in Joy Food, started off when I was using in my notes in my iPhone, and I came across a little pencil icon, which I used to sketch out little reminders, really, made,
okay,
you know,
yeah.
aid memoirs. And then I thought, well, that's something, there's something there, you know, because even though they're without skill,
Yeah.
I suggest they are you know, there was something, I was definitely able to create something of an atmosphere.
They're full of heart.
Yeah, yeah. But also I think it's quite interesting with some of them, if you do a simple sketch, you know, and this is interesting about going back to when we're writing about recipes, you know, there's sort of the important lines that people kind of gloss over, like cover the saucepan, put a lid on the saucepan, whatever. It's not actually whatever. There's a reason the writer has written that, or else cook without a saucepan lid.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
And interestingly, when I was doing this, I found that the illustrations that I used, a few of them, to illustrate that point, I thought they were very, very strong.
Okay.
As a teaching point.
Yes, yeah.
Because actually simply
Because
that,
people are visual.
yeah.
And that's it for me, like as a photographer as well, like I'm so aware of that visual representation of whatever it is,
But the drawings were done mostly on my iPad using my finger.
Yeah.
And there you are. And a couple of them actually have made their way to being tea towels. Anyway.
Oh, there you go.
With the wonderful ladies at Stable in Dublin, we did a little collaboration, and we're now working hopefully on a little collaboration for table mats. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
Amazing.
Is there another book in you, Rory?
I don't know. I mean, there's definitely a book I would like to write, but it would be big and extremely expensive to produce.
Okay.
So I'm struggling to find a publisher who's willing to do that. But I may just have to put the money in myself into it. Yeah.
You need to go to the self-publishing talk at the Ballymaloe Festival of Food.
Yes.
Because actually, self-publishing though is becoming a very interesting area in cookbooks.
Okay.
Yes,
Three
yeah.
Denim self-published, and
Okay.
Yeah.
Good point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would love to do a book. I'd like to do a book really based around where my partner and I live, our home, Snogborough, and about the early cycle of that, about inside and outside the house, the food we eat, some of the food that we grow ourselves, some that we get from the wonderful produce at the cookery school locally, how we live, what our table is, what our table looks like, the few pieces of art that we have in our house, what the garden looks like at different times of the year. But it would be, kind of sick-makingly glossy and fabulous.
it would be fabulous.
I kind of
Your house is
feel
fabulous.
as you describe that, it's almost like the definition of what home is to me.
Yes,
Would that be right?
Yeah. So anyway, we'll see. Yeah, I would like to do something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, what does home mean to you now?
Well, it's everything, really. I love being at home.
Yeah.
Both inside our house and the garden. I mean,
Okay.
I don't call myself a gardener, but I do garden.
Yeah.
I'm not a Sarah Raven or a Jimmy Blake, or
But
a
you have
Catherine
extraordinary
Fitzgerald.
knowledge.
But I have
Yeah.
a bit of knowledge at this stage, and the knowledge comes from my deep rooted, forgive the terrible pun, just interest in how things grow, but also of course mainly our food. But and at the base, or again the root of that is. I sometimes, forgive me for repeating myself, but I've said this many times before, that even though everything about growing, whether it's a beetroot or a head of lettuce or sea kale, all of that can be explained scientifically, beautifully. And I think science is wonderful. I love science, love the notion of science, the accuracy. It can all be explained scientifically, of course, but for me, there's the unknowable. I know that, when you put a seed into the ground, the scientists will say this is exactly what happens and this is why it happens, and I will believe them. But to me, there's still something just a bit out of our realms of knowledge at this stage, or our possibility of understanding, the great mystery of life, I suppose, in a way. And that's what ticks the box for me,
That's gorgeous.
Sean, the great, we in Ireland claim Sean Scully as an Irish artist. Across the water, they claim him as a British artist. But he, reading one of his recent talks, he talked about, at the moment in this world we live in, I think he's particularly talking to us slightly spoiled people in the Western world, but the need for the unknowable. And perhaps it's the unknowable, or my perception of the unknowable, in how food grows and that sort of magical thing that is sort of emotional and what's the other word? Sort of spiritual almost. And I've always felt a kind of a responsibility. I'm not make myself out to be a saint or anything like that. Not like that at all. Not sackcloth, but a sort of responsibility for being given the opportunity to do something that I love doing and that I'm fortunate enough to be good at doing, that's really a gift. It really is a gift.
It is a gift.
And to be aware
Yeah,
of it.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Because often we walk so blindly.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
incredible.
So,
And I feel there's great pride in that as well.
yes, yeah. So, it's so the work, frustrating as it can be at times and busy and all of the rest of it hard, it's the drudgery. The sort of downtrodden drudgery that is some people's work existence. I'm fortunate to have avoided, and I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, I think the three of us can say that. It's a it's a huge gift.
Yeah.
Besides the self-publishing workshop at the Ballymaloe Festival of Food, which we're
Blatant
all
plug.
going to go to. Blind plug. What else are you looking forward to at the festival?
All sorts of things, and thank you to Brie and the team for inviting me to come and give a demonstration. I always love giving my cookery demonstration. Yeah, that's always great fun. And I think long and hard about what I'm going to do. And Gus, you do these demonstrations all the time, and it's never easy, really. It's not a question of just jotting down things. It's the time of the year and all that sort of thing. Anyway, but I'm very much looking forward to having dinner cooked by the Fat Badger, which is that wonderful restaurant which caused quite the sensation in London, which is run by two of our past students from the cookery school. Yeah, and their food is really wonderful. And again, actually, I was fortunate enough to be able to film there for just the last series of Christmas shows I did, which was really a great thrill on so many different levels. Really, yeah.
It's such a beautiful room as well.
It's just
Fabulous.
The
so
Fat Badger room.
fantastic.
Yeah, it's
it
a
is,
really beautiful
Yeah,
room.
I mean, it's up 3 perilous flights of stairs.
Yeah.
Fire officer, how are you? But anyway.
I might cut that out too.
Yes, exactly.
No.
But,
I'm the editor of this show.
But absolutely marvellous. But as a teacher, because that essentially is what I do now and I've done for a long time, that's really quite a thrill. I mean, for me, the teaching cycle makes sense when the students you taught start to teach you. Then that circle is squared.
That's
if you
really
know what I mean.
important
That's-
as well, isn't it?
That's beautiful.
So that was a great thrill, and then I'm also looking forward very much to Homestead.
Yeah, Homestead
From-
Cottage on Saturday night.
Yeah, on Saturday
just
night.
Robbie.
Yeah, we're doing just sort of exceptional things. But there's so many different highlights, the different producers and people you meet and just bump into. I'm also looking forward to the music and the crack and, all of the
The martinis at the bar.
martinis at the bar, all of that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yourself and Rory will be holding up the bar with the martinis,
Yeah.
will he?
It's bliss for me, actually, because I was very involved in a precursor to this event, which was called Litfest, many years ago. So for me to be able to arrive at the festival with virtually no responsibility, do my cookery demonstration, and then just be able to have a fantastic time is utterly wonderful. Yeah.
Super.
And you meet people you haven't seen for a year, and then you meet new people, and then and to have all these wonderful cooks coming here and producers and speakers it's great.
It's inspirational.
Yeah, I often say this to our 12-week students, and our students at the cookery school when they arrive from various different parts of the world, and to the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Because we're in the middle of nowhere in one sense, but certainly for our 12-week students, it kind of quite quickly becomes the middle of their everywhere, and that's part of our responsibility to them, that's the wonderful thing about this little part of East Cork, which is a wonderful place to live anyway, East Cork. But we're very lucky that there are people coming, going all the time. There's stimulation. There is conversation. There are new possibilities, and I love new possibilities. I get bored pretty quickly. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Well, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
That was
lovely to
so
chat.
lovely.
Lovely to chat.
Oh, I feel like I haven't sat down and had a proper conversation with you in so long. That brought me such joy.
Yeah.
Thank you,
It
thank
was
you.
Yeah.
Really
My
lovely.
pleasure. Well, I'm
and
so
I'm
looking forward
to
to the
seeing you at
festival.
the festival.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Oh, lovely.